Hello, everybody. Welcome to this IMechE webinar. We're going to be talking about sports engineering, in particular, careers into sports engineering. So earlier this year, or at the end of last year, the IMechE published a policy report on sports engineering. One of the key recommendations from that report was to have a stronger community within the UK, and that's partly what today's about, bringing people together and talking about sports engineering and see what we can do from there. I encourage you to look at the resources tab, which has been provided. In there, there's some links to some different resources all about sports engineering, which you should find useful. That includes the IMechE policy report, which I was just talking about on sports engineering, and also one which is really good for students and anyone just generally interested in sports engineering is the UK Sports Engineering Seminar Day. That's a free event which anyone can attend, and all the details are in that resources tab. And there's some other things in there as well. Another thing that came out of the IMechE report as a recommendation of a sense of community was the IMechE has formed a sports engineering group. So anyone who's interested in that, you can get in contact. The information is provided in this webinar, but you can always just email me or ask as well if you're interested in that. So moving on to the focus of today, we've got two great speakers telling you about their journeys into sports engineering. There's going to be some really interesting discussion. So if you have any questions, you can write them into the questions tab, and then at the end we'll take questions. So we'll have our two speakers first with questions at the end. If you have a question you want to ask, you can write that in the side. So we have Jordan, who's going to be speaking first, and we have Caroline as well. So Jordan works at New Balance, and he's going to be talking all about that, about the design of football boots, amongst other things. And then Caroline from the UK Sports Institute. So I'll pass you over to Jordan, and hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, let me quickly share my screen. Tom, could you let me know if you see this okay?
Good, thanks.
Yep, all good. Great. Okay, guys. So yeah, my name's Jordan Probst. I currently work at New Balance and in the product development team, particularly, or specifically on the global football footwear team. So yeah, I'm going to talk through a bit about myself, my journey, how I kind of got into sports engineering, starting from university, where I've been and how I've ended up at New Balance. And then, yeah, day in the life of essentially what I do in product development, what does that mean and how does engineering kind of fit into that? And then I'll probably talk into more about how, what the role of engineering is in New Balance and the wider industry. And then I'll touch more on product creation and how we work across many different teams and how we bring a product to life. And then finally, I'll just share some tips for any students that could be interested in going after a career in sports engineering, particularly in a brand. So yeah, so a bit about myself. So I'm around 7 years working in the sports goods industry, particularly specializing in sport and outdoor performance footwear development. I currently sit in the New Balance product creation team, responsible for leading the end-to-end product development for global football footwear. So that's from concept development, prototyping through to commercialization and production, and I'll talk more into that later on. For me, when I was asked to do this webinar, this presentation, I kind of had to reflect on why I do what I do essentially. And thinking back to when I was a child, when I was growing up, I was quite fortunate to. My parents put me through many different sports, and I was obsessed with sports. And from a young age, I loved the competitiveness, but also the sense of belonging in sport. But with that, I loved product design and maths, and being able to kind of marry those two together always kind of fascinated me. And I was quite lucky that I stumbled across sports engineering and sports technology, which is the main reason why I wanted to kind of go after this as a career. So that was one of the main reasons why I kind of approached sports engineering before I got to university. So just touching on my journey then. So I went to Loughborough University. I studied sports technology at 2012, and I was there for 4 years. I was then fortunate after my second year of my studies to get an internship Adidas as a footwear developer. And then off the back of that, I then came back to university to finish my final year of studies. And I was fortunate to work with Adidas as part of my final year project. And then once finishing my undergraduate degree, I wanted to learn a little bit more in depth about engineering. Hence, so I took another year at university studying mechanical engineering, a master's in mechanical engineering. And this was more focused on computational engineering. I had a small stint with Hawkeye Innovations just after finishing my master's degree, which again, I'll talk more later on. And then after that, I then spent roughly around 5 years at Pentland Brands, where I was a product developer working across Berghaus, Canterbury, New Zealand, and Enduro brands. And then most recently moving into my position now at New Balance, where I'm working in product development within the global football team. So I'll talk a little bit more in detail about each one. So yeah, starting up at university, I think many of the listeners today will be in a similar situation as an undergrad. For me, it was that synergy between sports science, biomechanics, and engineering, and it was exactly what I was looking for growing up. I was always fascinated by the technology in many different sports, and this undergraduate course gave me that that sense of understanding from what goes into building or the engineering behind products. But it was quite broad, and I think going into my second year, I was quite fortunate in a way to get a role at Adidas, an internship, to kind of understand a little bit more about what goes on in industry. So I'll talk more into this now. So when I went to Adidas, this was in Germany, and it was my first kind of insight into a global sports brand. Understanding how the brand operates, how different teams within an organization are set up to ensure the success. So yeah, fresh out of university, I was exposed to the full end-to-end product lifecycle, from styles being briefed through to testing and production readiness. I was given the opportunity to learn and understand footwear product creation, the traditional footwear making, but also how engineering influences how products are designed and built. I was fortunate to shadow colleagues in the team, learning and understanding the role of product development and supporting members in the development team on many different areas. So slowly learning and understanding the expectations of the role and how I can add value. I was put through internal learning courses on footwear development, and then eventually I was given my own styles to develop. So an example here is rugby. So I was actually part of the tennis and heartbeat sports business unit, which focus on essentially tennis and then all the Olympic sports, and rugby and handball and volleyball. So some of the specialty sports which aren't the major sports, such as football and running. So yeah, I was fortunate to work on many different footwear styles from tennis, rugby, volleyball, which as a developer or as an intern, it was quite exciting really. So I was able to help with material exploration, developing new material or new color projects, and then leading the fit and wear testing, which was really great. It gave me an insight into how prototypes or products are reviewed through each stage gate of the development process. And then one of the other exciting areas was being able to meet athletes. So I was quite fortunate to meet many athletes. And here on the left, you'll see I met Anna Ivanovic one day when she came in to visit us in Germany. So yeah, I mean, the internship gave me that drive and passion to really see this as a career that I really wanted to get into. So it reinforced it's definitely what I wanted to do. So specifically within footwear, and I think just kind of reflecting back on my university studies, although it was fantastic to learn about the engineering side, going into industry really gave me that sense of understanding of what happens in industry, because I think there's quite a big difference between university and then in brand as well. So yeah, it gave me insight into how many different teams kind of operate together within our organization. So then, yeah, I came back and, as I said, I did another year at Loughborough University. And the reason behind this is because taking learnings from my time at Adidas and working with many different teams, I was able to understand how different teams operated, particularly their innovation or engineering teams. And one area that I really want to focus on was understanding a little bit more around the principles and practices of engineering and core mechanical engineering, particularly FEA, or finite element analysis, computational engineering, because I felt like this could be a really unique skill set that I could bring to a brand or an organization. So I spent another year at Loughborough University, And then, like I said, I'd spent a small stint at Hawkeye, and then I moved into my position at Pentland Brands. So Pentland Brands, if many people aren't familiar, are a company that own many different sports and outdoor brands. I was fortunate to originally, I was brought in as a product engineer, and I quickly transitioned into a footwear focus role. So I was leading the footwear product development for the sports and outdoor brands, which are Berghaus, Canterbury of New Zealand, and Endura. The company is a smaller brand, so I covered many brands as a footwear team. So essentially, it was a one-stop shop for footwear. It was quite unique in a way to cover such diverse portfolio of brands and projects. So I was working on technical hiking footwear, trail shoes to high-performance team sport, rugby footwear. And I was responsible also for the inception of the Endura footwear business, which is a cycling brand, if people aren't familiar. It was their first collection into the market. So my focus within Pentland Brands was on new product development and new product innovation projects, which was super exciting to be involved in. And then finally to where I am now, I was fortunate to get a role at New Balance within the product development team. So I'm now essentially leading the product creation and product development for the inline product development team for global footwear. For global football footwear team, so covering the full product hierarchy from elite level on pitch stylos down to junior and entry level price points. Within my role, my responsibility is to take a design and turn it into a physical, tangible product, not just for elite level price points, but over a number of different commercial price points. I'm quite fortunate to have worked across some quite fun projects, so particular some athlete special edition, special makeup projects like you see here on the right. This was a style we did for Harvey Elliott a few months ago. And I've been with New Balance for close to a year and a half now. It's an interesting journey to be with a brand that's still relatively new to the football market. So going up against the big names in the market is really interesting and exciting. So that was a very quick run through of my journey. And I wanted to go into the next point around what is the day in life of a product developer or working in product development. So product development essentially is another name for product engineer or product development engineer. And we're responsible for translating design ideas and concepts into tangible 3D products and prototypes. We do this through a process of prototyping with our factories, ensuring samples are engineered to required performance standards, tested appropriately within the lab or on field with athletes. So here's a collection of images that I want to kind of share, hopefully convey some of the aspects that I work on day to day. I must say every day is a different day and it's a fast moving industry. So we'll be working on material exploration, soil unit development, so CAD development, upper pattern development, even the last development, into digital testing, be it through FEA or component testing, and into physical testing, like you see here at the bottom. So a bit more of a summary and a little bit more detail into what my role really consists of. So like I said, we translate design ideas and concepts into tangible 3D products through a process of prototyping with factory partners. We oversee the entire product lifecycle from initial concept development through testing into production. So my role now at New Balance, I work anywhere between, essentially 24 months out from market. So around 2 years from market, we'll be working on samples and concepts. And as a developer, we're responsible for the full product engineering. So building product specifications, optimizing how the shoe is constructed, working through different material makeups, material exploration, material selection to meet performance requirements. Essentially, we build the product from the inside out, making sure designs and products are structurally sound, but also actually meet the design intent that the designers and the wider team expect from the product. The other side to my role is ensuring that the designs are actually manufacturable and scalable to cost as well. We have to ensure commerciality. We have to ensure that we're going to be making some money. So part of this also includes element of costing. So cost engineering, making sure styles that we develop are feasible, ensuring that we get a return on investment. Because at the end of the day, working in a brand, we need to be making money. And then the other side of my role is testing and validating. So mechanical testing and physical testing, doing fit and wear testing with our athletes to ensure the fit for purpose, and we've built a product that is going to last and will be durable on the pitch. One of the other exciting parts of my role is that I work part of a cross-functional team, so I'll be collaborating on the daily with teams such as design teams, product management team, and even our manufacturing partners to ensure samples are constructed on time, within budget, and meets the requirements of the wider team. And then finally, manufacturing engineering, we do have touch points with our manufacturing partners to ensure all materials, sol units are within specs. So we'll be working on injection molding, compression molding specs as well. So there's a lot to do as a product development engineer, and it's all encompassing from testing through to production. So that's a quick overview as a product developer. What I wanted to share now is kind of the role of engineering in New Balance, particularly from a brand perspective. And this is it will be slightly different depending on the brand, the size of the brand, and which brand you're a part of. And I guess an example from New Balance, I wanted to prepare a slide on just how a business like New Balance is set up and share the different functions within a brand and how engineering is touched on different roles. Because the role of an engineer isn't just specific to my role. Engineering touches many different functions, so not just the only one, not just the one I sit in. So within an organization like New Balance, for example, there are many different functions working and contributing to the overall success of the business. So imagine a machine, there are many different cogs moving and working in tandem. So as a basic overview, we can split the role of engineering in New Balance into what we call inline, product creation, and then innovation. So I currently sit in product development, which is in the inline section here. What we mean by inline is that we're closer to the market, we're more commercial, we're more responsible for commercializing concepts and styles, taking the design and concepts and scaling them to be production ready. So usually around 2 years out from the market, whereas if we go onto the innovation side, the teams working in the innovation space usually work in anywhere around 4 years or more out from the market. So this is made up of many different teams and functions, including designers and project managers. The innovation team is actually more focused on future concepting, less focused on commercial readiness, more on technological advancements. So focus on concepting, more room to fail, explore multiple work streams and ideas. And then engineering touches many different teams across both inline and innovation. So can touch on project management, research and development, material engineering, manufacturing engineering, sustainable development, which is a big focus for the brand at the moment. So there's a lot of different areas within New Balance that have engineering, and I think with New Balance seeing themselves as a leader in sport innovation and technology, it's kind of important to have a good spread of engineering roles and responsibilities throughout the hierarchy and product lifecycle. Next point here, I just wanted to share how, or show a schematic of how we're set up within our teams and how they interlink. So as I said before, I sit in product development, and then our main points of contact are with our product management team and design team. We also work cross-functioning with many different teams to ensure success of projects. So our Asia counterparts working on manufacturing engineering, our factory partners, and even we've got product development teams in Asia as well. As a quick overview, the product management teams, they set the brief for the season. They're more marketing led, so they identify the customer need, the larger business objectives that need the project to fulfill. The design team, as you probably can read, it essentially responsible for the overall design, creative vision that is set out by the brief, and then as a development team, we are responsible for translating the design and the brief into that tangible physical product. And then the innovation team, as I spoke about before, they're more future focused, new technology, materials, concept exploration. But the PM team or the product management team and the design team will work closely with the innovation team on setting future briefs and future concepts. And then as well as us in product development, we will work with the innovation team on potential new material exploration. If there are anything in the pipeline that we can potentially funnel through into commercial readiness, we will do that as well. So that was a quick overview of how we operate as a business at New Balance, and then finally, I just wanted to share some tips for students that could be interested in sports and engineering. More so, if you want a career working within a brand, particularly like either New Balance or Pentland Brands, where I've been to before. So yeah, just some quick tips from my side that I've learned from over the past few years is first is kind of build your network, talk to people and learn from their experiences. I think LinkedIn is a great platform, so make sure your page is up to date. Join relevant groups, follow people in the industry you find have an interesting career. Again, with LinkedIn, it's great that you can follow their career path, understand what they've done and where they've been and how they got to where they are. If there's an opportunity to visit conferences to meet people from the industry, I'd probably encourage you to do that as well. The other thing to do is embrace a non-linear career. So there's no one pathway. It's rare that you'll fall into a perfect career. So earlier I talked about that I had a short stint at Hawkeye. I was there for 4 to 6 weeks, I think it was. And, I if I'm being honest, I was after my master's degree, I was struggling to find a role in the industry because it is a competitive marketplace. But I took a role at Hawkeye and as a systems operator, and personally, it wasn't for me. I'm more of a product person, and that's not to say that other people don't enjoy that role. There's some incredible teams within Hawkeye, but for me, it just wasn't a good fit. And I know from my background in product engineering, that's kind of the area that I want to pursue. So for me, I knew that I wanted to take the experiences that I learned at Hawkeye, but I was able to apply that elsewhere. So take experience from any job, even if you don't feel it being the right job at the right time. There'll always be opportunities to move on, and there's always crossover skills. There's transferable skills regardless of what job that you take. I would figure out what you value and where your interests and specialisms lie. So for me, it was product engineering. It was building products. It was how can I look at the finer details and ensure that a product that I'm building brings value to an organization. So like I said, there's different pathways. Try something. If you don't like it, take the experience and learnings from it. There'll always be crossover and transferable skills. And then the other thing is, how do you set yourself apart? Internships are great way to get exposure and insight into a brand and business. For me, getting an opportunity at Adidas really gave me exposure and insight into how a business kind of operated. I didn't know how a business like Adidas would work when I was at university, and I was really fortunate to experience that. And it allows you to work with many different teams and help you understand where you might want to work. Even if you're in a different team at the time, you might be working with different teams and think, actually, I'd be quite interested to explore that in future. I'd demonstrate skill set in your interview as well. Can you show practical examples? Just be clear with what you know and how you can add value to an organization. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do a master's degree. For me, I wanted to learn more about FEA and computational engineering, that for me, I could add extra value to an organization through that way, an additional skill set. So I'd encourage you to be detailed and don't afraid to kind of big yourself up as well. It is hard, but don't give up. It's hard to get that first step, and it took me a while. I'm completely open about that, but it's a really interesting industry and really rewarding. So I'd encourage you to keep going. And yeah, it is a brilliant industry and really exciting once you're involved. And then, finally, industry is changing. There's always opportunities. And then lastly, you're not your title, you're the skill set that you bring. So I think that's pretty much everything from my side. I'm conscious I'm going slightly over time, but thank you for allowing me to share kind of my journey and being able to present to you guys and share any tips. So hopefully there's something that you can take from it. So that's everything from my side. I'll stop sharing now.
Thanks, Jordan. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Caroline, and similar to Jordan, I'm just going to talk through a little bit of my journey into sports engineering. There'll be some similarities that you'll see along the way, and hopefully some different things, and hopefully it'll just inspire you wherever you are at in your journey. So I guess, every journey has a beginning, and this is me on the right-hand side looking at my sister building Jupiter. I think even from a young age, I was kind of curious, looking into what other people were doing, but also trying to work out how to build my own things or what I could do. And sport was also a massive passion of mine. This is me kind of in third place at school sports day. And even from kind of a young age, I just knew that I wanted to be kind of outside, active, doing anything I could. I kind of, played a lot of football, a lot of netball, and then that kind of transitioned as kind of I grew up and got really into track and field and athletics. And so I guess for me, sports engineering was something I didn't really know was a thing, but actually they were my two passions as a kid. And yeah, I'm really privileged that it's worked out as a career. This is me dressed up as a planet. I think even, again, just showing that, I was always curious about designing things, painting things, building things. I did DT in secondary school, and this table is still in my parents' house, and this keyring, it's quite hard to see, but it was supposed to be a snowboard, but I actually chipped the end, which is why it then got a little fin on it when I was trying to drill it. So yeah, I think I was, even at that age in school, I was kind of building things, but also learning how to adapt and pivot. And as I got older, I got really into pole vault, and that kind of became my main passion. I think I would have loved to have made it as a professional athlete. I never got that far. And so at that point, at the end of school, I thought, well, I've enjoyed maths and physics and product design. What do I do next? And where do I go? And that led me to Loughborough University, which is one of the kind of best reputations for sport, for athletics particularly. And there I studied product design engineering. And when I went through UCAS, I applied, all my other courses were kind of sport technology or sports engineering. But when I was in an interview, someone said, actually, why don't you go broader first and maybe you could specialize later? And kind of throughout my degree, I was like always just waiting to do something sport related, but none of the topics I did were. And I was a bit frustrated. I was like, oh, why did I take that advice? Like, I was watching people doing Jordan's course, for example, and they were doing kind of sport specific things, and I was doing much more generic things. And in fact, my final year project was essentially the biomechanics of horses. So whilst the measurement technology was sport related, I was still doing an application that wasn't sport and that I wasn't necessarily that passionate about. But looking back now, I think I learned a lot through that course. It was kind of a lot of problem solving, kind of engineering fundamentals, how to think, kind of mechanical design principles, a lot of CAD, that sort of thing. And it's really set me up for kind of where I am now. And during that, in my third year, I had the opportunity to do an internship. I went to a little company called Tetra Engineering, and they're based over in France. And I must have applied to like 20 odd jobs. I was going to the career center all the time, and I was like, I don't understand what I have to do to get a placement. But I think it's just, when you're that age, you don't really know how to write a CV. You've never really gone through interviews before. And it was almost just going through those rejections that actually helped me get better and put together better applications. So I worked at Tetra, and they were pretty heavy engineering. So they specialize in heat recovery steam generators on power plants. So I would literally go out, measure the thickness of pipes to see if it had corroded. And I was safe to say by the end of the year, I knew what I didn't want to do as an engineer, but it also, again, gave me more skills. I sort of understood what it meant to work in an office environment, how to write engineering reports, how to communicate. And so whilst it wasn't what I wanted to do, I learned so much through that. And then I had a couple of summer jobs. And so I spent a summer in Malaysia working with HLP, and they were an insurance broker for sort of big engineering sites and boats and things like that. So it kind of was close to engineering, but again, I learned loads, but it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I then spent a summer as a research assistant in the Sports Tech Institute at Loughborough, and I was basically in an anechoic chamber, which is an acoustic chamber. It's totally quiet, and I was hitting tennis rackets for a whole summer. You're kind of in there 9 till 5. There's no windows, no outside. And I was like, oh, it's sports engineering, but this also isn't what I want to do. I don't want to sit in a room all day by myself making a tennis racket vibrate. So I think through all those experiences, you just have to go through them, and you kind of think that you know what you want to do, but actually, even when I thought I was doing what was my dream, it still wasn't quite what I expected. Then in my final year, I had the opportunity to go on exchange. So I went over to Chalmers, which is in Gothenburg in Sweden. And my main motivation for going there was that I knew there was a really good pole vault coach. And so it was less about the academics at that point. And I just thought, oh, I just want to go there and train. And that was great from a pole vault perspective, but probably less good from an academic perspective. And I finished that. And then I was like, right, what do I do now? And I looked at the sports engineering website, and Tom Allen was recruiting for a PhD student at Sheffield Hallam. And so that was kind of the next step. I'd applied for a few different PhDs in different topics, and that one, seemed like a good fit. So I moved back from Sweden, went to Sheffield. I'd never been there before. And the PhD was looking at developing test methods for snowboarding. So it was less about sort of product design and more about test design. It's a very common injury in snowboarding to break your wrist. And so they were after, how can we develop a way to test wrist guards that we can actually understand if they're going to perform better. So this is one of the tests I developed. So essentially just pull back a surrogate of a hand, and it's connected here to an Instron machine. So just looking at force displacement and what it takes to do that. And even just to build what looks like a pretty simple rig, you're still kind of going through different processes. So I had to do 3D scanning to obtain the geometry of the arm. I then manipulated that using CAE tools, so cleaning up the mesh, and then modified that to build this thing on the right. So then I had to put a hinge in and use a mixture of 3D printing and kind of more traditional methods for the finger rods. So kind of all those things that I'd learned during my degree, I then had this opportunity to actually put together. And then I was able to test the product. And then I went on from that and developed something a little bit more advanced. So this was kind of ARM 2.0, and we had like, some measurement techniques built in. So there's a potentiometer here to measure the wrist angle and a force plate. So I guess all that kind of time through my undergrad and then my PhD, I was just chipping away, building up my tools, my skill set, and developing new things. And then this surrogate then formed part of a bigger test. So this is a impact test. So this top bar comes down and it hits the wrist underneath. And then I can take measurements to understand how those different products are performing and make a comparison. And after that, pulled all that together, and that became a new international standard. So now any product that goes into the market has to go through this test method. So whilst it wasn't conventional product design, it gave me the opportunity to build a test method and start to understand what products do. And after that, I had the opportunity to go over to Adidas in Germany, similar to Jordan, although I was in the innovation team. So they're sort of 7 years out from product. They're much more sort of around tech scouting and understanding different applications that can be used in sport, but they're not specific to a product. I was doing a lot in simulation, so looking at how the human body moves, how when we put equipment on them, whether that be a sports bra or a shoe, that can affect the movement of that, and how we can then understand those things and influence the design of a product. And it was at the time that the first carbon midsole was coming out as well. So we're understanding how can you take this quite complex lattice structure, what can you do to tune that to affect a person's movement? And having spent pretty much all my life in learning in school or in academia until that point, suddenly my mind was like blown. I was like, wow, there's like this whole other world out there where what you do actually can end up in a product eventually. And there's loads of passionate people out there. And I guess sports engineering is quite nice in that everyone you meet tends to have some kind of sporting interest. So there was a good time out there, and was there for 6 months. And then I came back to the UK, and I didn't have a job, didn't know what to do next. And I ended up at the Health and Safety Executive, which is like a little office in Buxton off the edge of the Peak District. It's full of very clever scientists who are trying to make things safer. And it wasn't what I wanted to do, but I was kind of like, well, it's engineering, I need a job. So I was there, similar to Jordan, I only lasted 8 weeks. And while I was there, I was sort of blowing up batteries as we were exploring how things can go wrong in electric cars, and doing a lot of filming of that and sort of still some analysis. And whilst, again, it wasn't what I was passionate about, I was still using those tools that I'd learned. I then joined Pentland, so Jordan and I worked together for a little bit there, and I sort of worked on anything that wasn't clothes and footwear within that portfolio. So spent a lot of time working with the brand Speedo and developing sort of protective equipment for Canterbury and Mitre. So head guards and shin guards were part of the portfolio, and I guess my background in testing those was quite helpful. And then swimmers, and looking at things like goggles, earplugs, swim caps, which all can influence a person's kind of comfort experience of the sport. A lot of people don't swim because they get swimmer's ear. So whilst developing an earplug isn't the most cool thing to do, I think it actually made me realize that what you think of as a product that is used for sport is actually a wider range, and you're still improving someone's quality of life through that. I then decided that I wanted to go back into academia and probably more in the innovation, I guess, and research side of things rather than pure product development. So I went to Manchester Met, and again, joined Tom. So you can kind of see the sports engineering community in the UK is quite small, and there's quite a lot of overlap. And I was lecturing product design engineering there, and it was just great to be able to kind of share with students that engineering can be related to loads of different things, and sort of how to design and make and test something in that iterative cycle that you go around, and to build the next generation and to give them a passion for it, really. So I did that, and then an opportunity came up at the UK Sports Institute, and that's where I am now. And I guess I'm not really an engineer anymore. I'm like an innovation consultant. So I basically get paid to ask questions. So the UK Sports Institute, we were formerly called the English Institute of Sport, and we changed the name last year. But they've existed for over 20 years, and they're basically a national institute with regional sites. And we exist to support British Paralympic and Olympic athletes in sort of pursuing their goals. And so that can be through sports science, medicine, biomechanics, psychology, physiology, strength and conditioning, like a range of different services that we provide in the institute. And I sit within the performance innovation team. So we're a team of about 17 people, kind of from a range of backgrounds. We've got engineers, physios, psychology, sports science, biomech. And we kind of work together in this cross-functional team, and we go out and we speak to all the different Olympic and Paralympic sports across the UK, trying to understand what their challenges are, where there's opportunities to enhance their performance within the rules. So whether that's through equipment, whether that's through training science, or whether that's through other adaptations. And then we kind of information gather and then determine what the best way forward is and how we can enhance their performance. And we have this model in our team called the innovation journey, and we've stolen it from John Saddington. But I think wherever you are at your career or in your studies, you can probably relate to it. You kind of start off on the top of the mountain, you can see a great view, you've got this great idea and you're really excited about it. But then you sort of go on with it, you start to unpick it, things don't always work out how you'd thought, and you kind of go into this deep, dark swamp, and then you kind of come out of that. And I guess we see our job as innovation consultants not to let athletes and coaches go in this deep, dark swamp, and they need to focus on the fundamentals, get their training right, get their nutrition right, stay injury free. And if there's things that are the cherry on the top, which is kind of what our team offers, then we'll seek to do that for them and kind of take them over the bridge, as it were, so they can come out on top. So for me, every day is different. Every Olympics or Paralympics is every 4 years. So we cover summer and winter, and they're kind of 2 years apart. But we kind of work predominantly on a 4-year cycle. So the first year after a games is a lot of asking questions, understanding how we performed at the last games, where the opportunities are, what other nations are doing that we can learn from, and much more technology scouting. So kind of going out more to research institutions or to other companies to understand what's kind of up and coming that maybe the sports aren't aware of, but that we can develop in-house to support them. And then there's a lot of Microsoft Teams meetings, a lot of days where I'm sat in my spare room trying to project manage. And there's days where I'm digging through data. There's days where I'm in the wind tunnel. Again, I find myself in a room with no windows. There's days where you're out on the track with the athletes, with the coaches, understanding their world, understanding what you can measure, how you can influence training. And they're probably some of the best days. There's also a lot of days where you're on the road, and we're a national team. We're based across the UK, so we just go wherever we have to go. So this morning I was on the M1 at 6 a.m. and there's a fair few days like that. But when you get to meet the athletes and do everything, it's quite rewarding. But I think the thing that resonates through all of these days is just asking questions, understanding someone's context, particularly with a Paralympian. I don't understand what they've been through. Often, a spinal cord athlete, they'll have limited sensation from partway down, so they can interact with equipment, but they can't feel it. So I always want to try and understand them, understand the user, and take this sort of user-centered design approach to any project that we work on. And I guess in terms of where your journey could take you, I can remember back in high school, we had to write an essay in French about the future. And I said, I want to work for Adidas and I want to design shoes. And I guess for 6 months I came close to that. That's not where I am now. And I think everyone always has a plan, which is a nice straight line, but it's never like that. There's always wiggles. There's always things that don't work out. But I think as engineers, we know how to problem solve. We know how to ask questions. We see things in a certain way. And sometimes my mates are just like, you just ask so many questions. Like I'll go out for a bike ride on the weekend and they'll tell me something and I'll ask loads of questions. They're like, I don't know, it was just a news story. But I think that's an attribute of engineers that you can either love or you can find really annoying. But I think it's a skill that you should definitely learn to leverage. And I think Albert Einstein put it really well. You have no special talents, but you're passionately curious. And I think whatever you do, you should just always be curious, always try to learn, to skill up, understand things, how they're working, what they're doing. Because a lot of times you're just applying something from a different sector or a different application to what you're doing, or to sport, or to something else. So there's loads of crossover and loads of interesting things that you can learn. And so yeah, that's kind of a bit of an overview to my journey into sports engineering. Hopefully you found that helpful.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Jordan. That was great. So we've got plenty of opportunity now to have a chat on some of the questions and delve into some of the things that you were talking about. So if anyone wants to ask questions, don't forget you can put them into the questions, type them in. We've got plenty already, so we're gonna have a nice chat and we'll get going. So first question we've got here is from Matthew. So what advice would you have for someone that's already an engineer but wants to transition across into sports engineering? You know, it's very competitive to get in. What would you say to that? Do you want to go first, Caroline?
Yeah, sure. I think just never be afraid to sort of explore your network. I think Jordan mentioned it in LinkedIn. There's loads of different companies out there, and actually there's engineers that can fit in any institution or any organization, and you just need to learn how to almost sell your skill set and what you can add. I think as the world moves faster and faster and innovation and technology grows, like if you're into computer science, there's great opportunities in sports. There's so much data measuring and tech going on, and there's so many companies, probably less in the UK, but the world over. I think there's loads of opportunities, and I guess you just got to step out and put yourself out there, and you might not get the first hit, but I think if you just keep exploring it, and also there's things like the conference, like Tom is heavily involved in the International Sports Engineering Association. This summer they've got a conference at Loughborough, and it's just another great place to meet people in the network as well.
Yeah, I can add to that as well. I think Caroline's made some really good points there. I think with your skill set in engineering, you're already kind of there, right? And I think as particularly speaking from a brand perspective, it's kind of showing what your skill set is. And at the end of the day, you are the skill set. You're not the title. It doesn't matter that you're not a sports engineer, but you can apply the skills that you've learned into a sports domain. So, yeah, like network, speak to people who are in that industry or an area that you want to go into, and talk to them how they go into it. But I think from a skill set perspective, you're already there, and it's just how do you bring those skills and add that to an organization to add value? How do you bring value to an organization? Because ultimately, if I speak from a brand perspective, we've got people sitting in engineering roles with not necessarily engineering background, or got engineers working in a slightly different role, and it's kind of how they bring their value and expertise into a role and add value. So I like to think that the title doesn't really mean much. It's actually what you bring to the table. So I think as an engineer, you're already kind of there. It's just, the next step is bringing that to an industry, bringing that to an organization in some form.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got a few questions actually on that topic. So it's a common theme. I think there's lots of people who are already engineers that are keen to get in this industry, which is great to see. I would also recommend that you look at the resources which we shared. That's what most of those resources are about, is lots of events you can come along to, other resources telling you more about sports engineering and how to get involved. Also, as well, one of the things that I noticed. Sorry, were you saying something, Jordan?
I was just going to say something. It is a very small industry. It's a small, and people know a lot of people. So a lot of people know each other, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of crossover. So if you network really well, speak to somebody, opportunities will be there. And like you say, go to conferences, use the resources, speak to people on LinkedIn. And I think part of that is just networking. And because the industry is so small, there will be something that will come eventually.
Exactly. We definitely saw common themes between where you and Caroline have both been, and you say if you get in somewhere and then go from there. That's how it works. I think one of the things that I thought was interesting was, Jordan, you sort of started specialist and then went broader, and Caroline kind of went the other way around. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, specifically what degree you study, whether you go postgraduate, all these things. Does it matter, or is the industry just looking for good people?
I'll go first this one. I think it doesn't matter. I did it the unconventional way, I'd say. Yeah, like you say, sports technology first, and then going into mechanical engineering. It was a big learning curve for me doing it that way, I must say. Like especially a master's in mechanical engineering, it was quite brutal. Actually, that year was quite tough. But I really wanted to apply myself to learn more in-depth engineering, just because I wanted that on my belt, so I could bring that skill set to an organization, or bring it as another skill set essentially. And I don't think it really matters as long as you have the skills that you can bring to the table. It probably would be easier for me if I did it the other way around. But at the end of the day, I think you said it right. I don't think it really matters. I think it's just what you have to bring ultimately.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think if you're hungry and you're passionate, you'll get there either way. It probably doesn't matter what you do, but it's just learning the skills along the way either way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then you talked about sort of placements, sort of the importance of placements and getting experience as well. So nice to hear a little bit more about that. And also, are there opportunities within your organizations for these? Do you want to go first, Caroline?
I think it's funny that Jordan and I did a lot of similar things. We didn't meet until Pentlands, but I think our paths are quite similar. And Adidas is great, and they have a very big internship program. I think if you follow them, like every year, twice a year, they're recruiting interns. And I actually did what they call a postgraduate intern, where you couldn't intern unless you had already got a degree, but they also do undergraduate ones. I think looking at companies like that, and they give you a lot of responsibility, but they've got a very well established program. And we don't currently offer internships within our organization just because of how we work with Olympic cycles doesn't always match.
So if someone wanted to work for your organization, what is the route in? You advertise? Or?
Yeah, exactly. So, and whenever roles become available, we advertise scanners through our website. And it doesn't necessarily need to be in the innovation team. There's people in our team who started in an admin role, like they were ex-elite athletes. They loved what the institute did. They started in an admin role, and then after a few years, they moved into innovation team. And I guess just be humble. Like I think you can think, oh, I've already got a PhD. Like why would I want to be an intern? But actually, if it's a short time of 6 months and you're in a place in life where you can do that, I think you'd actually learn a lot through that. And just because, like Jordan said, the title doesn't match what you think you can bring, once you're in a role, you can often carve out your niche.
Yeah, and I found internships. I wouldn't say there's a stigma with internships previously, but like the internships Adidas was really rewarding. They gave you an opportunity to grow, learn on the job. Because when I was at university, I had no clue what Adidas did. I wanted to go and be part of Adidas because I love the brand, I love the technology, but I didn't really know what went into it. And the internship gives you that opportunity to really understand how the business operates, because there's so many big teams working together. It's not just one person, one team doing all of it. It's so many different teams working collectively together to build this shoe. So as an intern, you get to really understand how all these teams work, what each team does, and like you can move around. Like ultimately, you could be in like for me, I was in a development role, but I would work with the innovation team, I work with the testing team, and I thought it was really interesting to learn about what they do. And it could be that you get into a role that you're not particularly enjoying, but that's fine. It's an experience. You're an intern. You want to understand how the teams operate, and it could be that you see a different team and go, yeah, I really want to be part of that. Let's talk to that team, understand what skill sets I need to get involved in that team. So I'd probably say from a New Balance perspective, we also offer internships, not to the size that Adidas do. They have quite a substantial internship program, but New Balance do offer internships. They offer a year internships at the moment for undergrad students, so any student that are doing a sandwich course. Frustratingly, the next cohort I think the deadline has come now. So, but we will be, I think Harry in our team, who's the kind of who's heading that up, will be looking for candidates by the back end of this year for next year's internship program. But yeah, so I guess that's kind of summarized. But I think internships are a great way to get I was always told to get the foot in the door. And when I learned that when I was growing up at university, I was like, what does that even mean? How do I get my foot in the door? But it's so true. And I can give my experience of how I got my internship at Adidas. And it's probably not the most conventional way, but I did it through networking. So I was lucky to speak to somebody who was on my course at Loughborough, who knew somebody who did an internship at Adidas. And although I had to apply traditionally, I actually spoke with that person, and then I was able to speak to the hiring manager directly. So that's an example of networking. I was quite lucky to speak to the right people and get an interview. So another example of how networking can help in these situations.
Jordan, I was interested that you were talking about sort of computational engineering. So that's, I guess, like a broader field as sort of within sports engineering. What can you tell a little bit about what that is and how that sort of influences your role at the moment?
Yeah, I guess, well, to be blunt about it, I don't actually do it now in my role at New Balance. So I did a little bit more of that when I was at Penton Brands. So computational engineering mainly, so CAE, so CAD, essentially computational engineering, or computer-aided engineering. So using 3D CAD and then using finite element analysis to basically do structural analysis. So for example, when we're opening new outsoles, we would just run a simple static analysis to understand potential stress concentrations, where there might be any durability issues in the long run. I know other teams, for example, in Speedo, they've used CFD to measure the hydrodynamics of the swimsuits and stuff like that. I think when I was at Adidas, for example, they use it a lot more. I think some of the bigger brands, they tend to use that skill set a little bit more. The issue that comes with it is the resource, the time, and the expense with these sorts of things. And I'm just being quite honest about it. And a lot of brands will actually rely on external agencies to help support with that. And I kind of knew that quite quickly after my time at Adidas, and that's why I wanted to learn a bit about it at university to add it to my skill set. So applying for a role, I just thought it might be a good addition that might bring additional value to an organization or brand. But typically, because it is quite a heavy investment, a lot of brands do look external for that resource. So having that skill set does help, I think, if they want to bring that in-house. But like I said, for New Balance, we don't tend to do much of that. And a lot of that is probably owned by either our strict manufacturing engineering teams out in Asia, or we do partner with our suppliers who have that skill set that do that every day. So not really doing that much at the moment, but again, I think it's a valuable skill set if you do have it, because just understanding the results, if you ever get shared a presentation on it, is really valuable as well.
Thank you very much.
I'll just add to that. I guess in our industry, we do a lot with Paralympic athletes, and so no athlete is ever the same, but particularly in their case, I guess their body shapes are often different and different times of the season. So we don't do it in-house, but again, we consult out to universities or experts in that field around making specific equipment adaptations. And also, I don't know how many of you follow track cycling, but there was a bike released earlier this year or last year that is used then for lightweighting and for things like that, and for, I guess, bespoking a component or a piece of equipment in a very specific way in a very specific area. Then things like algorithmic design or end topology, those types of things can be really useful. And I think we'll only see more of that in sports equipment as, I guess, the technology trickles down. Typically, these things start really high cost, as Jordan said, but as licenses go down and more people become familiar with it, I think it's definitely an area of growth.
Yeah, I guess to add from my side on that one as well, like you mentioned about the expense, and because we're doing moldings like injection molding, compression molding, opening tooling with our factories is quite expensive. So especially when you think of footwear, full size one, you open up the tooling not just for one size, but you're doing it across the spread of the full size one. And typically when you open a mold, you do it quarter size, but essentially do it size by size. It can add up quite a lot. So it can be, particularly for a smaller brand, it can be quite a significant investment when we're talking about, from a business perspective, just for one part of a shoe. So I think it's critical that, particularly if we're talking about football cleats here, if we're talking about injection molding, hard plastics, making sure that the design is actually structurally sound. We want to just make sure we test it so we don't have to reopen tooling. So it's almost like a safety net to make sure we touch all the boxes, it's sound before we go into production, because the last thing we want to do is open something and then we have a load of failures, because then it's a big cost to the business. So we do use it in small areas. So similar to kind of what Caroline was saying. So yeah.
Thank you very much. We're coming to the end of the time, so just a couple more sort of final questions. But what about sort of big societal challenges that kind of maybe related to sports engineering? So I'm thinking now about what might be the challenges in the next 5-10 years that the next generation of sports engineers coming through should sort of prepare their skills for. And
I think a nice place to see that is in the IMechE report. So the one that Tom put together, you can see quite a lot of the themes in there. But I think sustainability is massive. And like you think about the number, like sort of carbon footprint of footwear or clothing with dyes, that you already see brands kind of trying to make a shoe which can be broken down and reusable or don't use dyes. I think, yeah, that's a huge opportunity. I guess in high performance sport, we're probably a little step behind that because we're still pushing performance perhaps at the compromise of that at the moment. But I think, yeah, that's going to be something that's only going to increase. And I think athletes, particularly that travel a lot, like after Paris, the next Olympics is in LA. And actually, if we want to cut our carbon footprint, then we're not going to be traveling out to places. So how do we simulate the competition environment or think about that in a different way, which reduces our carbon footprint? So it's not only at an equipment level, but it's also at a whole training and environment level as well. So I think, yeah, sustainability is a huge challenge.
Yep, agree with that. And we have from our brand perspective at New Balance, sustainability is a huge driver at the moment. It's a real big focus. Like I said, we touch on it both on the innovation space and inline. So we've got teams working from our materials on sustainable development. I think the challenge that we have is actually making it commercial. So typically these materials are more expensive and which impact our margins. And it's not great as an engineer to say that, but at the end of the day, as a business, we do need to make money, and it's difficult when we have to balance something that's a little less commercial, but is better for the environment. So that's the challenge, is finding environmentally preferred materials or reducing our carbon footprint, but also making something that's commercially viable. So that's the kind of the challenge for us.
Yeah, great. Thanks. So we've got clear agreement there around sustainability. So you would suggest that any opportunities to learn about, study, do projects or experience related to sustainability, regardless whether that's in sport or not, as you were saying before, Jordan, you can have something that you can then bring to the brand in an area which is growing. So anyone that's thinking about their future career should be thinking about areas which are expanding, and that's the areas where there will be future opportunities. So just quickly to finish up then, just hopefully very quickly each, what are the main perks of your jobs then, being a sports engineer?
From my side, there's many. I think when I grew up, a bit like Caroline, I was obsessed with sport. I did many sports when I was younger. For me, it's bringing that excitement to the consumer. It's being able to engineer something that I can be proud of, almost put a stamp on things and said, I did that. I'm quite fortunate that I get to work with many incredible people in different teams and different people who are incredibly creative. And for me, as an engineer, it's about collaborating. It's not just you're an individual. You are working in a team with many different ideas, and it's just coming to the table with those ideas and putting it on paper and doing it. Essentially, as an engineer, we're creative. We're able to explore different things. And I'm very fortunate to be in a position where I get to explore these avenues, explore these ideas with our factories and build something that I'm truly excited about, and hopefully at one stage can then put it through a commercial pipeline and put it out into the market. So for me, it's building a product and being proud of it. And I think when I was reflecting on this, when I was building my presentation, I was thinking back to when I was a child, and I always wanted to be an inventor. And it's a crazy term or crazy thing to say, but at the time it now makes sense, because as an engineer, we are inventors. We build things and we want to create new things for the market or people to enjoy. And that's kind of the big thing for me, is just building something or making something that can bring happiness or, something to somebody's life. So, and then the other perk for me is I because I'm working with many different teams, many different people across different countries, I'm speaking to different people on different time zones in the US, in Asia. So I'm quite fortunate to be able to travel with my role as well. So go to factories and explore and see what's going on, how things are made, and actually learning from different cultures as well. So there's other avenues, other aspects of my role, which I definitely take pride in.
Yeah, similar. I think for me, it's the people, whether that's the athletes that you're supporting, the contractors who are building stuff, or the people in your team. Like, you want to wake up and every morning know that, you know, it's not a grind, but you have to spend time with these people. And I think it's probably not unique to sports engineering, but the fact that we are all so driven and passionate in our sport as well as in our professional life, I think really helps. And I think, you know, when the Paris Paralympics come around, like there's athletes that I've spent a lot of time with, and just to see them on the start line and to know that, you know, they've got the best kit and they've gone through the best process possible, I think it's just, yeah, it'll be super rewarding.
Thank you very much. Some common themes there around working together, you know, multidisciplinary teams, sense of achievement in what you're doing. And I think for both of you, it's seeing those products or seeing that result going out and people actually using and benefiting from that. So that's great. And I think that applies across all different areas of engineering. So that's a great note to finish on. Just anyone that, you know, is really interested in becoming a sports engineer, check out the resources that we've shared. They're in the side. If you've come along to the events, hopefully we'll see you there. Join the IMechE group. All these different opportunities are available. So just reiterate, it is a competitive field, but you need to get your foot in the doors. Jordan was saying, a good way to do that is to come along to the events, network, and meet people. So thank you very much, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks, guys.